Hi Rob, how are you?
Hey, how are you, Ulysses? Good to see you again. Part two, we're going deeper.
Yeah, definitely. We said we're gonna do it. So today is the day of the episode number two,
I love it.
and today we're going to talk about mentors and mentorship. Since the first episode, we talk more about other topics, but also related. We talk about entrepreneurship. You remember?
Yep.
And
No,
it came,
absolutely.
yeah, it came in during the that episode. We decided to do this because, well, mentors play a very important role in entrepreneurship, but also with executives in corporations. And yeah,
See,
you remember
no,
that?
no, 100%. 100%. Yeah, no,
Yeah,
I mean, excited to be able to go a little bit deeper and, really dive into what we, like you said, what we talked about, but the idea that regardless of like external world facing entrepreneurs or internal entrepreneurship and executive kind of entrepreneurial thinking,
exactly.
I have found in our experiences, as your viewers can see on the YouTube channel here, our company tagline is literally the mentorship company, right?
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
that applies to a lot, not just what we perceive like one mentor, one entrepreneur sitting at a Starbucks, like teaching them the business model canvas. This over 4 years for us in LATAM has involved, many conversations of mentorship in a wide sense of talking to CEOs and talking to presidents and rectors of universidades and talking to individual entrepreneurs and small entrepreneurs and ideation, but also talking to entrepreneur slash founder CEOs of huge multi-million dollar companies, right? So,
Exactly. Yeah.
see,
Yeah. Yeah. So I have a few questions, and we're going to start with a basic one, which is,
perfect.
what is mentor, Rob?
Great question. So there are a lot of different answers, right? I'll put my hand up first and say today I'm no expert in any of this, but I have strong opinions in all of it.
Yeah, that's
And
perfect.
inside of Growth Hacks, we have certain philosophies on how we view things, right?
Yeah.
So one of those would be this word, like how do we define mentorship? So my definition, our definition is it's kind of in its simplest form, it's split in two ways, right? So there is what a lot of people think is mentorship, which we actually believe is coaching or skill development, and what that is more of, let's call it a tactical exchange over a very simple construction, right? So a coach can teach you how to get good at Google AdWords. A coach can teach you how to maybe work on the timing of your presentation skills. A coach can work with you on understanding the concepts behind AI or machine learning or anything, right? Like that. Like I need to understand how to do something very specific, like acquire a skill set or get better at a skill. That can be coaching, right?
Okay.
And it can be much more of a tactical relationship. What we believe differentiates mentorship, and I'll tie these two together in a minute. But what we believe differentiates mentorship is that mentorship is fundamentally a human relationship.
Okay.
Right? Mentorship is fundamentally an emotional relationship, and mentorship is fundamentally repetitive or longer term. Right? So we do believe that inside the construction of what is a mentor, or how is someone a good mentor, or what is mentorship, we do believe that there is coaching inside of that,
Okay.
right? That mentors can coach, of course. But what we have found is not every coach is necessarily a good mentor,
Okay.
right? Because of those differences. Because the coaches can be excellent at SEO, right? But they might not have the emotional construction or the life experience or the industrial experience or the patience or the emotional EQ, the emotional quotient they might not have that to have a good relationship with you,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and if we don't have that relationship component, well, then it's just, we've got just a tactical exchange of something. If we add in the, I care about Ulysses holistically, right? I care about the totality of Ulysses. And then that is going to help me understand what it is that he's trying to achieve in his business or in his career or in his mission or in his purpose. Okay, now I can be a more effective mentor. By the way, no different than we could have just said, I could be a more effective friend, or I could be a more effective manager, or I could be a more effective, spouse or significant other in life, right? So it's the EQ, that emotional quotient difference between mentorship and coaching.
Okay, okay. Now that you're talking about the differences between what is a mentor and a coach, the question is there a difference in the mentor and coach while using methodologies? I mean, when you're using methodologies, it means that you are a coach or you are a mentor, or do the mentors need to be using methodologies or not in order to provide the advice?
Yeah, it's a super question, right? Especially in like in my experiences in Latin America, right? Latin America, both the economic kind of development model as well as the educational development model tends to be very heavy, very methodology heavy, right? It's very like, we have to have an established practice, and it has to have a certain number of steps, and it has to follow a diagram, and there's nothing wrong with that per se. I tend to be, my personal opinion, I tend to be a believer that if you were to poll most individuals involved in any kind of a mentor relationship afterwards, and we were to poll like a big enough sample size, I would tend to suggest that the attributes that they found to be most valuable to them would lean more towards the human interaction than they would lean towards any methodology. So having said that, I'll go back and answer your question in a more specific way. I believe that there's value in structure.
Uh-huh.
If we want to define that structure as a specific methodology, or if we just want to say that there is kind of a baseline structure to the practice of mentorship in a particular relationship to produce a particular outcome, then I believe in structure. But over time, I'm an advocate of the type of mentorship that more heavily weights the human EQ component of it over the methodological component of it. But let me give you an example, actually, because I think this will help too. So just a few hours ago, today, so it's a timely example. I was invited previously by some people we're close with to be a participant in a program that they're doing that I've helped with in the past. And so it's like a mentor training. And they said, you don't need this, like you understand what we're doing, but you're part of the group. It would be nice to have you for the other people who are going to be hearing this suggested kind of outline for the first time. And so I found that to be very useful. Right, like and then the questions that came from the first-time mentors in this particular group, after they had been walked through, like, hey, here's how to prepare for the mentorship session. Hey, you're going to have 5 mentorship exchanges with these particular teams over this particular period of time, and we're not going to suggest that you have to do it this way, but we're going to give you kind of a workflow that says, if you use mentorship session 1 to talk about this, and then you build on that to talk about this in mentor 2, and in session 3, and in session 4, that will help these people that are going through our experience to come out with probably a more specific outcome at the end, which is what we're trying to create. And so in that regard, I personally, the person who just described how I feel about this, like I looked at that and I was like, okay, like that's useful. Was it a methodology? Not really.
Okay.
Was it some structure to give kind of a guideline to the mentors on how they could be the most effective mentor? in the context of what this particular organization was trying to create as far as the outcomes? Yes, totally. So structure, methodology. I could give another example. I don't want to waste your time, but like I got exposed to a lot of in 2017 while living in Chile. I got exposed to a lot of like very methodologically heavy mentorship programs.
Okay.
Where like you can see it in my face on the YouTube, you'll be able to see this reaction. maybe people can pick it up in my voice, but they were, in my humble opinion, they were too heavy methodologically. They were too weighted on this is how we mentor.
Okay.
And it's only this way.
Okay.
And the most important thing is to check these boxes as you move your mentee through this journey. And it was, and I said this, by the way, I'm not saying anything in secret here in Chihuahua that I don't say in Chile. Like, I've said this to the people that I knew that were running those programs. I've said it to them since. Like, what always kind of worried me about that, or bothered me about that, was that the reason that they were doing it was more around the mentor. And it was more around like, we're creating a program of mentors and we've created a unique mentor methodology, and we're going to give our mentor a super specific certificate for completing our program that then they can put on their profile that says they're a mentor from our program. And there was so much talk about how we're training the mentor that I'd always felt like that the mentee, the actual user, the beneficiary, was kind of like the afterthought.
Yeah.
Right. And so my belief system and our kind of how we do it at Growth Hacks and how we train mentors in some cases, and then how we work with our client programs, is much more towards, let's have some structure. Let's make sure the mentors are prepared. Let's help them understand we have a training, like a 30-minute training video that is very much about like how to be a great mentor in the 21st century. And it's balanced in this philosophy of EQ and some structure and some follow-up, and kind of actionable progress measurements, let's say. But it's devoid of like this is our way.
Yeah, and I agree with you in the sense that you mentioned that it's a relationship. I mean, you're building a relationship between two or more people, because, teams are integrated by more people, not only one. I mean, we're not talking about one single executive, one single person.
No. Yeah, the example I gave from this morning, today's example was actually the mentor will be mentoring teams of like up to 5.
Yeah. And that is why you mentioned that a mentor is trying to build a relationship, and vice versa. Also, the entrepreneur executive is trying to build a relationship. And sometimes, I mean, while building these relationships, there is a match. Not all cases, there is a match, I mean, it depends also on the personalities and the energy and the vibes of the people. And also, well, related to the project, if the mentors can provide advice related to the project or related to the needs and wishes of the entrepreneurs or the team. What do you think about that?
And thank you. That's a great segue to highlight something that I think is critically important. And again, I'm sharing our point of view, but I think that this applies universally to anybody. So if some corporate client, big corporation of yours, was saying we're going to create a mentorship program, a mentoring program for our junior executives or for our mid-level managers, or we're going to create a mentorship experience around like our innovation, our in-house corporate innovation program, for example, I would say the same things I'm about to say, which is first of all, you have to build in flexibility. Second of all, as you said, the end user, the beneficiary of this, the client in this case, is the person that's being mentored, is the mentee.
The mentee.
And if it's not serving the mentee, if it is not encouraging, supporting, empowering, inspiring, educating, challenging the mentee. If the mentee doesn't feel that, and I don't care what the methodology was or who the mentor was, like by title or importance, that's just not a good match.
Yeah.
Right. And so one of the things that I see that is a great opportunity, which I haven't seen, so I'm putting this out there to your audience as kind of maybe a little bit of a challenge to think about going forward in corporate Mexico, for example, but it applies anywhere, is I've seen kind of this first generation of like in-house mentorship programming or mentor programs kind of established. And I've seen it be too often kind of the rigid, this is what we do, this is what we have, we match them, and that's it, right? And we assume it's going to be a positive. And I think then what we're starting to see now, 8-9 years into kind of the innovation world of Mexico, is that a lot of those outcomes haven't been quite as positive. There hasn't. Why haven't our people become more innovative? Why haven't they created more projects? Why haven't we created better products? Why don't they think bigger? Well, because maybe you forced kind of an agenda on them, and they were bad human matches, right? So, I mean, you and I met, and I like any human relationship, over time and exposure and understanding each other, we became friends.
Yeah.
But like, there are a lot of people that I met in similar circumstances as you at the same time as you 4 or 5 years ago that I never became friends with for a bunch of reasons, right? Like some people, like, same reason I should have been friends with them, but like they didn't share my value system, or they didn't see the world in the same way I did, or they prioritized things differently. So a lot of that applies inside of entrepreneurship and mentorship. And I'll finish this answer by saying this one really important point, which is what I believe is like the most dangerous, most ineffective type of mentor relationship is the one where it's like the senior person lecturing the junior person on all the things they don't know and they're doing wrong, and then judging their ideas or their products or their companies by this one main filter, which is, well, I would never buy that, so that's a terrible idea. Like, I would never use that service, so that's obviously stupid. Or I would never buy that. I would never sign up for that subscription, so there's no way it's going to work. Yeah. Our job as mentors, kind of like I view my job as a friend, like I'm there to be a thoughtful cheerleader to you. Like, your job, Ulysses, is to be a great dad and be a great leader and be a contributor to society and innovate things inside of Blue Wolf. My job as your friend is to be there for you, to encourage you, to listen to you. Occasionally, if I think that you're way off, I'm going to pull you back in. I'm supposed to challenge you to think bigger. If you have some crazy thesis on something, I'm supposed to poke holes in it, but I'm supposed to poke holes in it like in a loving way, so that you like be open to my criticism and my suggestions. I'm not here to lecture you. And a lot of mentorship, unfortunately, in less mature marketplaces, is still that old school mentorship. The old guy or old woman who's got the senior VP title, but maybe has no experience in your industry, like yelling at the young person going, that's a stupid idea. Why are you doing it that way? You should listen to me. And that's just really unhealthy. And I don't think that works with the millennials. And I definitely know that it doesn't work with the Gen Z.
Yeah, I agree with you. Another thing, Rob, is in the entrepreneurial world, there is one of the tips mentioned, especially since you remember that I was in the entrepreneurial ecosystem while I was in Orion and in MindHub. One of the main tasks was to get mentors. And it is a good advice to tell entrepreneurs to get mentors. And it's part of the program, of the acceleration programs, to get mentors. But executives, they are usually told to get coaches instead of mentors. What do you think
So
about that? Do you think they should be getting also mentoring instead of coaches, or what do you think about
it's a fundamental question, and I won't name names, but I won't name names of individuals or companies, but I'll say that there were a handful of relationships inside of our client relationships in the last 2 years that had me mentoring like very reputable name brand CEO, leaders of universities, NGOs, venture capital firms, et cetera. And it's funny because it became invaluable. Like, and now I'm talking about myself, so please take this in context. Like, if this is, I can say this because they said it to me. By the end of the tenure of these relationships, or the period of our time together, the common refrain was how invaluable our relationship was, and frankly, how they viewed me. And this doesn't have to be universally true, but how they viewed me as a friend, as someone they could trust, as someone they could confide in, as someone that they could vent to, as someone that they could get confidential advice on, things that then they could trust that would never be repeated again, that was going to help them make decisions in their business, in their lives, et cetera. And so to me, to the root of your question is, and this is where it gets messy, right? This is like semantics, but I think words matter. In the US, for sure, and in maybe the like more developed first world economies, you see this preponderance of coaches, right? Executive coaching, private coaching, all this stuff. And that's the word. And when I started Growth Hacks in 2015, 2016, here in Los Angeles, before it became what it's become in Latin America, I was in part trying to create a new community and a new platform that would kind of be the contrarian voice to that, like, hey, be a coach, be a consultant, be a consulting coach, because again, I just thought that the impetus there was much more like transactional, like, hey, you pay a lot of money to me, and then I'm going to be available to you, and that's not coaching. That's not like. So what I really think, here's the punchline, what I really think really good mentorship is evolving to become more like, is like a therapist.
Okay.
Like, I think what we're really leaning towards, and there's a great book. I'll send it to you after we're done, and maybe you can post it to your listeners, because I got to go find the title. But it's a gentleman and I'm drawing a blank on his name, but it's a gentleman from Silicon Valley, and famously used to refer to himself, like, for years as a coach, right? Like, as the coach to the stars. Like, he was the coach to all the key CEOs at all the big tech companies in Silicon Valley history. But now, like, I heard him on a podcast about a year ago, and then I bought a book about him. And now he refers to himself as a founder therapist.
Okay.
And I mean, he's not a therapist by like legal, he's not a psychologist or a psychiatrist, but he refers to himself as a founder therapist because that's what he was describing that the relationships developed into. So for me, I think it's, personally, I like the word mentor much more than I like the word coach, for the reasons I've said already. And I think that the best mentor-mentee relationships with executives, with corporate leaders, with like institutional leaders, with scaled up entrepreneur, CEO, founder types who are running big organizations, I think the best relationship is when the mentor becomes like a mentor therapist.
Okay. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. And another question, since you're talking now about the differences between the coach and the mentor, should a mentor charge for the advice, or is something that is given for free, just to be more open in that way?
Great question. So this is, now we're going really deep today. I love this. No, I mean, because these are, it's funny I say that, funny, because like you know, because you know me, but you may not even have thought that I think about this stuff in this way. But these questions that you're asking me essentially are like the root why of the tree of growth hacks. Like,
Okay.
we only exist because I've asked myself these questions that you asked today for the last 5 years, and I'm still asking them. We're still constantly thinking how to create this formula that unlocks human potential, right? So, all right, so now that I danced around that for a second, like the real answer is, I think no, right? So you asked, should the mentor charge for his or her services? I think no. And I think no, because I think that's where you can get down to the distinction between mentorship and coaching, or now let's use another word and put it on the coaching side of this fence and say consulting, right? So would I charge you for our friendship?
No,
never. And so if the fundamental aspiration of an excellent mentor-mentee relationship is to have a great human relationship, then to me it runs contrary to everything to monetize that.
Okay.
Right? Okay. Having said that, could an organization hire a coach or hire a consultant to come in and work on some very specific skill, or in the case of a consultant, maybe some very specific project? Yes. But I think, humble opinion, and there could be plenty of data and others perspectives that could say that I'm full of shit and I'm wrong, and that's totally okay. But let's put it. Let me look in the mirror here. So, in the context of a couple of these relationship examples that I've leaned on today from our past clients, Growth Hacks was engaged very specifically by scopes of work to do, let's just say, A, B, and C, right? And was paid X amount to do A, X amount to do B, X amount to do C. It was going to, the relationship and the context of that project contract was going to last for X amount of time, right? So very traditionally defined. But inside of that, Rob Ryan, as in that case, let's call me like the principal consultant on that project, along with my partner and maybe other teammate resources inside of our company who are executing on the A, the B, and the C. Rob Ryan develops close relationships with those CEOs, those decision makers, those executives, and becomes the mentor to those people. So I'm not charging them for the Uber conversation or the long dinner that in which we talk about everything that's going on in their life and their business. And when they call me at 2 a.m. on a WhatsApp on a Saturday and say, I need advice, I'm not monetizing that and charging them for that, because we've monetized the relationship with their company already. Okay. Right? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Definitely.
So it's kind of like the fuzzy gray area, but like that's how it's worked in our way. Because if I'm going to take this all the way out to its extension, I don't know that, and again, I don't know that, and this is just, I don't know. And this is one of these, honestly, I'm still struggling with the answer. Like, cause I think we're still defining it long-term, not just for Growth Hacks, but long-term. Like, I don't know that maybe some of those relationships become as trusted and as open and as effective if there was like a clock running and it was like, okay, I've got this session and then it's going to end at 60 minutes, but maybe that conversation that day, maybe the emotional or the intellectual need that day was 95 minutes worth of need. But if we're locking it down, I feel like that all of a sudden limits it. Right. Yeah. And well, I don't, and so that's why I say it's not a perfect analogy to a therapist, because a therapist would have a rigid time basis and a schedule but it's the emotional quotient is like a therapist. but it's structured in a different way.
Yeah.
It's by the way, this is maybe right now like the unanswerable question. I mean, it's a complicated thing that you ask.
Yeah, while I was a director in Orion and Minehub, I didn't pay any mentor. I pay a person who were coaching, who were training, who were providing consulting, but not mentors. But you know, now that you are mentioning what a mentor is, some of them didn't last very much. I mean, didn't last for a long time. They didn't create the relationship. Some of them did, of course. And yeah, and that was the main purpose. I mean, there were some cases in which the entrepreneurs had the direct contact with the mentor already. It didn't have me to be the intermediate to be connecting them afterwards. They were just giving their own cell phones and emails and exchanging communication. And after the acceleration program, they continue being friends and asking questions and providing advice. So they created the relationship.
But you know, it's funny, and I would love to hear your opinion on this topic, because I've been thinking about this a lot. So you know how in our world of both entrepreneurship and entrepreneurship, this concept, especially at like venture capital firms, for example, this concept of the entrepreneur in residence, right? Like there's this role, like this has become a thing, right? I mean, it was a Silicon Valley thing. Now it's become a thing. And it's funny because I said years ago when I first heard of that concept in the US, I was like, okay, so that person inside of a venture capital firm, like that person is basically just an executive on the bench waiting for cool ideas to come along to then become an executive again, like to become an operating executive. That's cool. But in a lot of ways, people were using this entrepreneur residence concept inside of programs to be like the parent, like the grandfather, right? And then the mentors were a layer down and the skill coaches were a layer down. And so we've actually, in a project that we're about to kick off in a couple of weeks in Mexico, we've actually kind of reintroduced it, but we call it something different. And we believe it's kind of like a super mentor, right? Okay. And so, and the reason we reintroduced it without naming names was, again, because in this particular project, some of the stakeholders have a very traditional love affair with, like, we have paid consultants that we bring in to interact with these entrepreneurs. And then we have some paid mentors that we bring in to interact with these entrepreneurs. And we have like very limited use of them and very limited session and And my partner and I both looked at that and said, like, okay, this is never going to be as effective as you would like it to be. And then we had like a year or two's worth of experience with them to realize that it wasn't. And so we were like, you're missing like one layer, one human layer to tie this all together, which is the entrepreneur. Yeah, okay, they can talk to the consultant, and the consultant works for, you know, EY and is an expert in financial modeling. Okay, cool. When they need the financial modeling, the consultant is like a coach. They can just go deal with that. But they need that padrino, that tío, that abuelo. They need that person that they can trust, that they can go to talk to about anything, which might also sometimes include like their experience in the program, right? Like, I'm not getting the support I need, so I need this. Or, hey, I got this coaching from this guy about this, but like, how do I apply that? I don't know how I feel about that. And so to me, there's this opportunity for kind of super mentorship, which again, to your clients, like if we're setting up traditional human resource mentoring programs, or if we're setting up innovation, entrepreneurship, business, like growth, like mentorship programs, I think this concept around like a super mentor, an entrepreneur in residence whose job is to be that super mentor, I think is really invaluable in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Okay. And one last question, and since we are running out of time, But I think it's very important. How do you find a mentor? I mean, while you are an entrepreneur, you can go to the accelerators and incubators. They can connect you with a portfolio mentors. But since you are on your own, you are alone, or you are an executive, how do you find first the mentor and second the right mentor?
See, all right. So this is going to be my since this is the last answer and the last question. This is going to be my shameless plug for some of what we're trying to do, right? So I'll first say, full disclosure, that may be the biggest problem that is still unsolved in the general like business economic world, in the developing world for sure. Because I think maybe in the developed world it's been solved by the, well, I'll just go pay for a coach, right? I have a lot of money, I'll just go hire a coach. Okay, cool. I hope he turns into a mentor, but like if he doesn't, whatever. But in the developing world where that is not a luxury, that luxury is not available, this is the biggest unsolved challenge. And we're trying to solve it. And we're, to be honest, we're taking, and we're about to create two new kind of, we call productizing, like two new experiences in 2020 and 2021, because we're constantly trying to figure out the new recipe for how to solve this and how to make it accessible to more people. Because that was really, if you wanted to go to like my aha moment of inspiration for why Growth Hacks was even born as an idea in late 2015, it was because I fundamentally believe that there is a need to democratize the access to healthy, sustainable mentorship for all. And as you described, your own words, the current economic ecosystem, especially in let's just Latin America for your audience, the only places that you can reliably, and not even reliably sometimes, find those resources is if you're inside of someone else's program or organization. So, right. So if I'm in an innovation corporate venture program inside of some big corporation and I'm getting mentorship as part of that, but then I quit my job and I go to work for the company competitor down the street, they don't have one, I'm out of luck. Yeah. Right. Or if I'm an entrepreneur and I'm in a program like an incubation program or an acceleration program or a workshop series program inside of a university or a corporate or a government or NGO or even through venture groups or angel groups, and I'm in there for 3 months or 4 months, and then that program ends, and they hand me my little paper certificate, and they say, you graduated, you picked demo day, then I'm screwed. And it's very difficult, almost impossible to like reliably find 6 months later, where do I find that trustworthy, credible, believable human person to support my journey? So we're trying to solve some of that, but we can't solve it alone. I hope that we trying to solve it creates like 50 other copycats behind us who try and solve it so that we can all actually solve it. But now I'll say, I think the best short-term, sadly, places to find them are inside of existing communities. Okay. Right. So most of those communities, unfortunately, are limiting for people because they involve like quote unquote being a part of a program. Right. And so what I think we need, and I'm again saying it openly, I hope lots of people try and create this, not just me, because the need far outstrips our ability to solve it. But like, I hope we create more communities that are accessible to people. And that doesn't necessarily mean free, like they could be paid communities, right? But I hope we create more communities that are accessible to more people, where inside of those communities, there are vetted, qualified, trusted mentor networks that exist that then, hey, I'm a part of this community now. And the value, or one of the values of being a part of this community, is I can tap into that, right? And maybe I even graduated from an incubator, and then maybe I graduated from an accelerator, and maybe I even got some angel funding, but now I've been out here in the real world, right? Or I'm a corporate guy or girl inside of a corporate innovation program, and I'm feeling like I kind of think I know what I'm doing, but I don't really know what I'm doing. And I really wish I had some experienced mentors around corporate innovation, but the only people that teach us how to do corporate innovation at XYZ Corp here in Guadalajara are the corporate innovation consultant guys that we hired who are teaching me how to be a corporate innovation consultant. And I wish I could just talk to other people like me who are corporate innovation people at other big corporations and have a community, because then I'm Rob Ryan is saying that I believe we would have a much greater preponderance of good mentor relationships. But right now it's a really, really big void unless you're a part of an existing program, which is really unfortunate.
Okay. Yeah. Perfect. I mean,
do you agree? By the way, do you agree with that, or do you think that was crazy?
Definitely. I mean, the concept of building a community of mentors is very valid. I mean, everywhere. And also, I mean, to provide some training to the mentors is very important, because that I know something, it doesn't mean that I can provide advice if I don't know how to provide the advice, you know? And how to connect.
And like, just to finish this off, because I feel like I didn't give a couple of examples that I should have, like, to make it not just my opinion, right? But in a couple of other countries, I'll leave them out to not pick on them, but a couple of the countries where there are these mentor networks that are these big formal institutions that are, you know, branded. There's a couple that were born in like Spain that have come all around Latam and South America in particular. And I have nothing against them, but you like to get mentoring from them, it's like applying to a program, right? Yeah. So you're not getting a program, you're not getting an incubation or acceleration. You're literally just like, I just want mentorship. I want a mentor, or I want a couple mentors. Like, I want a female mentor. I want a male mentor. Like, and by the way, let's not even get started. There'd be a whole other show if we started talking about female mentorship and the desperate need for that. But that's another show, right? But like, but to me, those programs, then they close themselves off and they make themselves exclusive, because they're like, well, we only have so many mentors, so we can only mentor so many people. And so therefore, like, the program, so it's more about like the program operating model. And again, it's not about the end beneficiary. It's not about the user experience.
Exactly.
And I'm like this crazy passionate advocate for the entrepreneur or the entrepreneurial thinker. Like, I want those people to get access to whatever they need when they need it on their terms, so that they can build the future world. And I don't want it to be limited by all walls and paywalls and structures that say like, you can only get it if you pass if we accept you. Like, that's so harsh.
That's true. That's true. Okay, Rob, we run out of time, and we're trying to keep it short.
That was a blast.
Yeah, and well, I appreciate.
We could probably co-host a podcast together.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, well, I appreciate it very much, Rob, again, and to have you sharing your knowledge and experience is very useful.
Thank you.
And
anybody that's interested in these topics, right? Or honestly, I'll put this out to everybody listening. Anybody in your community that wants some help and just wants somebody to talk to, or wants to get feedback on an idea, you can find us on social media at Growth Hacks, right? GROWTH, another HAXA, on Instagram and Twitter, on our website at growthhacks.com, Facebook, etc. And then you can also, they can directly reach out and find me, right? So you can find me at I am Rob Ryan. So IAM Rob Ryan, on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, all that stuff. And honestly, if anybody needs any help or mentorship, just ask, and I'll be happy to help, because they're part of your community.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Rob. I appreciate it very much. And definitely, we're going to put your basic information also in the podcast and the YouTube channel, so that people can contact you directly too.
We're here to help. It's a lifelong, I'm probably going to still be working on these big questions of yours when I'm like 90 years old. That's okay.
That's great. Okay.
Thanks, brother.
Well, thank you very much, and see you the next time.
Ciao.
Bye.